James's sandwich for today. And as you can see, lots and lots of seeds in the bread. I don't know how well it'll hold together. And I'm having a smoothie as usual. This is my second smoothie of the day because it's hot. So I'm
It's
more
hot inside.
apt to
And it will
drink
be
smoothies.
hot.
Oh, it's
later
hot
on.
here too.
Yeah, it's getting hot.
But I was sitting up in the sun over there, and then I realized, oh, what am I doing? James won't like this. So, anyway, I'm going to talk about critical business skills for success, because I was talking about it last, I don't know, a couple months ago. And I will have to return these to the library now because they're going to be, I think they'll be opening up things soon. They're not running along the COVID schedule. They've decided on their own schedule, and they're hoping that COVID kind of goes along with it. So, and this is what I'm seeing more and more lately, and you too. Yeah, we were listening to the CBC the other day. The funniest thing, there was an interview with, well, it always is, you know. There's an interview with, either you laugh or you cry, right? Some couple people, a husband and wife, who had come up. They were presumably dual citizens, Canadian American, because they were living in Texas, and they came up to their home in Canmore. So these are not poor people. They are wealthy enough. And in Canmore, I mean, who can afford, right? So, so they packed up their dogs and their kids and up to Canmore, and they were driving around with American plates, and we're told to be kind to people when we see American plates, you know, because you don't know their backstory. And so the interviewer was asking them, when did you come up? And there was a big pause. They didn't want to say. And they said 20 days ago, right? And we know, I mean, if you're following things, there's been a big outbreak in Texas, California, and Florida. So they're looking at things and they're going, God, there's so many sick people, I gotta get out of here. And so they come back up to Canada, right? And so you know, this is what's happening with a lot of people. If they're wealthy enough that they have the ability to come up, they're coming up. They're allowed to come up. We're Canadian government, not we're not. Canadian government is letting Americans come up. If they have, if they say that they have a home to get to in Alaska, I don't even think they need to prove it. So they might just be going right on up through and hitting whatever spots along the way they want to sightsee. They want to do some touring, you know.
So of course they go to Banff, Jasper, whatever.
Yeah. So anyway, James was saying right away, why don't they just get Canadian license plates? I mean, if they're Canadian citizens, this shouldn't be that hard for them. And
they were advertising.
They should not be driving around with American license plates in Canada, especially when they know what's going on here. So you know the situation. If you're an American or dual citizen, wealthy asshole coming through Canada, you know that there's now something in place where they're ticketing people with American plates at trailheads, which they should be. Oh, somebody's getting in a fight.
That's a bad fight.
Yeah, they're really angry.
Don't hurt yourself.
I love little birds, but I wish they wouldn't fight.
Very bad fight. If one of them gets injured, they're going to be casualties.
Yeah. Anyway. No, I don't think you should be nice to people who have American plates. I think you should report them right away. Yeah. That's what you should do. You shouldn't be nice and think, oh, you don't know their backstory. They have American plates. So, frankly, they shouldn't even be allowed up here at all. The borders were supposed to be closed, and I mean, we saw American plates at one day. This was right away when when the borders were shut down. We saw American plates at, what was it, Cottonwood Park, up at the trailhead. And we're like, huh. And then we thought, well, maybe they were stuck
Yeah,
here or
that's
whatever.
right. I remember that.
Yeah. So I don't understand why they're here.
Get Canadian plates or go back home.
Stay home.
Yeah,
Honestly,
stay
the
home,
borders
go back
should
home.
be shut. And they shouldn't be able to come up to Canada for the summer or Alaska and then go back down to the United States. No, the borders should be shut for tourism. This is tourism. This is how this spread in the first place.
Yeah.
And you want to amp up the COVID rate again? This is ridiculous.
They're already doing it in the United States. Apparently they've had their third worst day the day before yesterday, and the worst since April sometime, so roughly 2 months. It might be even more than 2 months, and it was as we expected. Eventually it would hit the boondocks like Texas and parts of Florida and stuff like that. Places that it's going to be really interesting in places that don't have good hospital systems and stuff like that. They won't even have a hospital system to blow up. It's New York is now the 3 states that house New York. I believe it's New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York have shut off travel to 9 states. I presume it's not just travel on the road, but maybe travel by plane and stuff like that. They might have closed stuff off with Pennsylvania, and they might have closed stuff off travel with Rhode Island and Massachusetts. It's hard to say, but that's what different states should be doing. The big cities that have gone through this sort of stuff and had to make their sacrifices because of a bad federal government. They didn't vote Donald Trump in, and generally I don't think that they've done the foolish center-left thing that Justin Trudeau did, which was call everyone back home, but allow them to be freewheeling for more than 2 months, or 2.5 months, going around the world, allowing 1 million people to come back. I don't know how many of those people were, touring, and how many were, had been out of the country before January the 1st. So when I say those people, that's a neutral term. Some would be bad, some would be good enough.
So I'm not going to read all of my notes I decided from this because, frankly, most people would find it boring. I find all the great courses really interesting. I would recommend all 3 of these. So I have Critical Business Skills for Success here, Foundations of Western Civilization 2, and The Modern Intellectual Tradition. It's a philosophy one. So anyway, James, do you want to talk about your book first? Before
I just finished it up just seconds before coming out. So this is a historical introduction to the philosophy of mind, and it's a 2nd edition by a dude called Peter A. Morton. So he has it's basically an anthology, but he has a lot of introductory material, explanatory material. He does a pretty good job of it. It's really quite a boring subject and stuff like that. It's what's the relationship between mind and body, and is there any difference? So the fascinating thing is a Canadian production. Not I don't know if there's any Canadians actually. There might be in the anthology, but the editor, Peter A. Moore, is Associate Professor of Philosophy in the Humanities Department at Mount Royal University, Calgary, Alberta. So this is basically a local production. Royal University's new entity. I think it was a community college or something like that. Anyway, he does a pretty good job. There's one of the fascinating things is he has a lot of stuff on Descartes. And if you read critical theory or literary theory or stuff like that, they're down on Descartes because Descartes split the mind and the body. And what they're saying is everything since then, all this science stuff, has been about the split of the mind and the body. Like scientists nowadays, they're materialists. It's all body. The mind is the body. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what biologists believe in. And this book is full of people who are taking the scientific approach. They don't follow Descartes. Descartes was something like 1650 or something like that. And Descartes was saying, cogito ergo sum. I think therefore I am. And he was saying that's solipsism. Like, how are we going to get over that? There's someone who's got to oversee all of it. God. I don't know if there's too many scientists studying the mind who actually believe in God. They might believe in God, but they, I know one geologist who, he gets in trouble. He belongs to Christian Reformed Church, and there are people in his congregation, this is according to his own account, will ask, you don't really believe that the world has lasted for millions and millions and millions of years, right? And he says, yeah, I do. I know he'd say it in a nice way, he's a very nice guy. Maybe I shouldn't be telling the story, but he tells it in class and stuff like that. So it's the same thing. They don't believe in Descartes, you stupid literary critics. Okay, you stupid idiots. They don't believe in the split of the body and the mind. They believe that the stuff that you read from these stupid literary critics is just awful, awful stuff. Fake left-winger stuff. Go get lost. Go jump in a lake.
Anyway, so would you recommend that book?
Not really.
Okay.
I slogged through 700 pages in less than a month.
All right. So you'd say sit down to this great course instead.
Yeah, that great course is better. This stuff about the mind, there are some philosophers who say, look, people used to have weird ideas about physics. They used to, up until a little bit later, weird ideas about chemistry, or what came to be chemistry. Same sort of thing with physics, what came to be physics. And now they've got weird ideas about, and they had weird ideas about biology. And those things went by the wayside. Now they've still got weird ideas about psychology, and those ideas will go by the wayside. And I think that's the most sensible sort of thing. It's like I say, perhaps like I say, religion is a failed science, and philosophy, sadly, is a failed religion. Okay, so it's doubly failed. And the reason why it's not so much, like a religion is a failed science. It was a science at one time, but thought to be something like a science, and then it failed. It's like the God that failed, communism. Mm-hmm. But philosophy is a failed religion in the sense that it comes up with these wacky ideas and can't get not enough people on board where they can really get persecuting people and stuff like that, so they can enforce it, their attitude on people. So it's just preliminary work, it's just, hey, it's like wool gathering. Imagine, it's amazing. I realize now where Einstein got the idea of Gedanken experiment. It's these guys. It's again and again. Let's do a thought experiment. Here's a Martian who thinks totally different from a human being, but you see and then they're looking at the mind of a Martian versus the mind of a human being, and I'm going, yeah, just forget it. You're doing these thought experiments. It's just a waste of time. It's just like Einstein, waste of time. Like a thought experiment. Like what would happen if a guy's in an elevator out in outer space and stuff like that and can't see the forces that are acting on him? Then you end up with acceleration being the same thing as gravity. The whole idea with a real experiment is you don't put limitations. See, this isn't a glassed-in elevator. It's closed in, so he can't see what's happening. Mm-hmm. The whole thing with an experiment is you make sure that you use a real experiment, not a thought experiment. You use every possible means of distinguishing forces and stuff like that. So Einstein did this, and no one called his bluff. It's amazing, like it's well over 100 years later. 115 for his special theory and 105 for his general theory of relativity. No one's called his bluff, really.
Okay, I
Except for
brought
me.
you some honey sherry
Okay.
onions to put on your salmon
Good,
sandwich
good.
and see if it holds together. I don't know. I put a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of seed in there.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about critical business skills for success. I'm talking from Lecture 23 notes. Coca-Cola worked closely with Cargill, their corn syrup supplier, to develop Truvia, a sweetener made from stevia. Pepsi was interested in stevia but had to find a different partner than Cargill, so Purevia didn't reach the market until 2 years after Truvia. If you are more dependent on someone or a product, they have power over you. Small businesses have some advantage when it comes to internal integration. They can usually align themselves better and faster than the larger, more complex competitors. Decision making is usually more concentrated in smaller firms, and employees have more concern for the success of the business. Where there is better internal integration, the company is poised to realize the greatest benefits of integration with external partners. Large companies are often more bureaucratic, which makes internal integration tough. Their power may be beneficial to them, though. Lecture 24. Chinese companies supply 96% of rare earth elements because their environmental laws are more lax than other places and have rare earth elements. He says these minerals aren't actually rare, just difficult and costly to extract, and China has half of the rare earth minerals. Map supply chain idea risk. Whatever. I don't know. I don't know what I was talking about there. Let's see. Oh, this stuff was
So
very
people
boring
who are
to talk
feeling
about.
sorry for China, like what's going on here? They're monopolizing all sorts of stuff, and people are going around saying, they're people of color and they're a minority. They are the plurality of the population of the world. That's the People's Republic of China. I'm not talking about people who could easily be refugees from the People's Republic of China and stuff like that over here.
Okay,
so don't go picking on people who are like that. But People's Republic of China, for Pete's sake, you'd better start picking on them, because they're picking on everyone else. They're picking on Canadians right now. They've taken a couple of hostages.
I'm going to start talking about the leadership part of this, which, if you look at this guy, he was talking about, he's that guy. He was talking about how he had
Is he a funky
played,
looking fella?
he'd played football,
Hey.
and his,
Yeah.
you remember,
Yeah,
and
I
his coach would always tell him, don't drop and he wouldn't say it, but it was obviously, don't drop the fucking ball.
Yeah.
And because evidently this guy kept dropping the fucking ball. And so he wasn't, so he was a failure when it came to being a football player. And somehow he ended up in business, doing the leadership thing. And I mean, honestly, this is what I'm accustomed to seeing. This is what's popular, is hiring the governments and in the management sector they'll hire failed sports players.
Yep.
And turn them into management people. If you're taller than average, and it certainly helps if you're an aggressive personality type, then you're in, right? And you get really big money just for these leadership qualities that you have that really can't be verified by anybody, and, unless you actually looked at the work that went done behind them without anybody else or something, and you wouldn't find that they actually have leadership qualities at all. It's a really great scam. Anyway,
so OJ, the infamous one, not Orange Juice, was used after he retired to more than anything else, he was used for advertising, but they'd send him on golf junkets with companies to golf with people they were courting.
Yeah.
You know, and OJ wouldn't know about the business. You know, like he
Oh, definitely.
didn't know
And
about
well,
anything really.
actually, I'm glad that you mentioned OJ because we were talking about how the police are thought to be, in general, racist against African American people in the United States, and they certainly were. If anything, they were biased in favor of OJ versus his wife. I mean, she was really getting pounded on,
He
and
was sent to the hospital.
and
They were getting
they
called out,
yeah, they weren't
and they
doing
weren't
anything
calling
to
OJ out.
defend her.
Yeah.
So,
Now there's a
It's-
gender issue here.
there
There's no
is,
doubt about
yeah.
it because.
But
his
what it
guy
is
being
it's a
called.
power thing.
Mhm.
And the police, for the most part, when you deal with an officer, they're going to be an aggressive personality type. And aggressive people, what they respect is aggression. So, and they respect dominance. It's a dominance and submission thing. And so, with OJ, here he was this successful, dominant personality type. He was a successful sports hero, and they respected him, whereas she was just this little woman, right? So, anyway, that's what it's really about.
So they didn't take the domestic seriously. They were, it's amazing how it was presented as though he was being framed by this Furman guy, when it was obvious that when we're looking at something systemic, that Furman might have been going out to get him, but systemically, the system was protecting him. And if you actually look at the way that case was handled, the system set it up so that they put two incompetents in control of the prosecution, and the judge was set up there to actually blow the case. Okay, so he was constantly ruling against the prosecution. Why was that? Because they didn't want a big race riot in Los Angeles. So they just set it up so that it would lose. They were systemically racist or genders against.
So anyway, I'm reading the notes from this leadership part because I want you to see just how weak it is. This was the weakest part of this business skills for success. And honestly, edit it out. It should have been edited out. This guy, it wasn't, the course itself was great course quality. But this guy didn't belong in the group. He was not.
It was embarrassing.
It was actually, I felt sorry for him being in with that because he didn't belong. I don't know what kind of job he could do, but anybody who is hired in this leadership sort of role really doesn't belong there. They should have been their job should have been annexed. This is ridiculous. So great leaders make it easier for people to get the work done, not harder. Start with the end in mind. Highly effective people typically have great self-awareness and find ways to control their emotions. Highly effective people manage themselves. They stay focused to achieve a goal. Highly effective people are socially empathetic, offer advice without offending. So he didn't like that his coach told him to not drop the fucking ball. They also have strong relationship management skills. They influence group emotions and set direction. Well, I'm sure his coach didn't like it that he was always dropping the fucking ball. Information is giving out. Communication is getting through. Effective communication is about speaking so that other people are willing to listen, and listening so that other people will be willing to speak. Research has identified 4 different kinds of employees: dream, upcoming, underachieving, and change or go. Dream employees, highly skilled and motivated. Your coaching role needs to be a nurturer for a dream employee. Give give them new and challenging jobs, regular praise and recognition, offer additional responsibility, empower them with additional decision-making and decision-making authority. And I had a boss that did that, and he was wonderful. I loved working with him. And I would have went the extra mile every day for him because he knew that I'd get the job done. He trusted me with it, and he let me go do my thing, and it was great. Up and coming employees are willing to work hard but may lack some specific needed skills. To effectively coach them, train them. Underachieving employees, they have skills and lack motivation. Clearly establish performance goals, standards to create a sense of performance. Ownership for the employee. Reinforce the positive and reprimand the negative. Change or go employees lack motivation and are skillless. Give them opportunities to succeed, but make it clear that failure means termination. Power is the capacity to affect others. Influence is the extent to which power is being put into use and to affect others. Legitimate power is formal. Reward power, promotional opportunities, incentive, coercive power, sanction, reprimand, exert power, people follow skill. Referent power, strength of personality. Legitimate, reward, and coercive are position power. Expert and referent are personal power. A common workplace mistake is failing to take proactive steps to increase this type of power. Another common workplace mistake is failing to effectively influence and manage your relationship with your supervisor. I don't see why. Honestly,
You gotta
the worker
manage your manager.
Exactly. You have to. There's a problem there. Right there, you should be able to see that there's a problem. If you're having to it's your responsibility to make sure the relationship with your supervisor is working well. There's a problem. Taking time to understand what's working well and what needs work is important. First step towards better managing your boss. Try to empathize with your boss to understand his performance goals. Try under promise and over deliver. Most bosses appreciate employees who exceed expectations. This will establish your credibility as someone your boss can depend on. Never identify a problem or bring a complaint to your boss without having a potential solution at hand. So now you're actually having to. So what's your boss there for? Always show respect for your boss, even though I don't know what he's doing. As a subordinate, there's only so much you can do to change your boss. If your boss puts you in a place where coming to work is more stressful and unproductive than it should be, then it might be time to consider leaving. What do you do?
Get rid of the boss.
What? Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously the boss is a problem.
Yeah.
And wow, you're really going the extra mile to try to handle this boss. Boy, oh boy. But I've been in that position and I left. That's all I did. So.
I've been in that position and I stayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
70% of American business leaders surveyed say that workplace conflict has increased. Well, duh. If you have a situation where the bosses are useless, and worse than useless, they're actually making getting your work done harder. Just them being there.
The important thing is
problem.
unions have been crushed in this time. It's not unions doing it, and I'm going to be perfectly frank. It's stupid bosses being given basically free